Donald Trump is trying to get out of a debate with Vice President Harris. Now, he claims the ABC News debate set for September 10th was, quote, terminated. But the Harris campaign says that's just not true. A campaign source tells NBC News that it's their understanding that ABC intends to, quote, provide the airtime to whichever qualifying candidates show up. Donald Trump instead proposed a debate with his friends at Fox News. Here's what he said last night in Atlanta.
You know, we're doing one with Fox if she shows up. I don't think she's going to show up. She can't talk. She can read a teleprompter. I'd give her about a 6. On a scale of 10, 6. For talking, I'd give her less than a 1. We need people that can talk.
Vice President Harris responded, quote, it's interesting how any time, any place becomes one specific time, one specific safe space. Joining us now is MSNBC political contributor and White House correspondent for Politico, Eugene Daniels. He is also the president of the White House Correspondents Association.
So you've got this. Okay, so first off, can I just reset here so everybody could be a little less confused on this blessed Sunday morning? Donald Trump, after all these years, cannot use a teleprompter, can't talk for ish on a teleprompter. So if she's at a 6, baby, you barely hitting 0. So let's start with that.
And he slurs his words.
And he slurs his words. He just can't talk.
It's crazy. The vice president was a prosecutor, a senator. She's a vice president of the United States of America. Like, come on.
The reality of it is, he's afraid. Mm-hmm. He's afraid of the black woman who's now running for president because he don't know how to handle that. Mm-hmm. He don't know what to do with that. Mm-hmm. So he tries to break it down. He tries to make it less valuable than it really is. Yeah. How should people read this part of this narrative? Because there will be no Fox. There will be no Fox debate. There is an ABC debate, Donald, not a Fox debate. But how do you think this plays out? What are you hearing about the machinations around the debate, possibly, you know, something being added that may be more neutral to both of them, since this is a little bit of a reset? And that's basically what he's trying to do.
That's what he's trying to say. I mean, you have to remember from the very beginning of the debate conversation, when it was Joe Biden as the presumptive nominee, Donald Trump was the one who was kind of just saying, yes, I'll do that. Because the Biden campaign came out and, you know, to Biden's detriment as the nominee, obviously, but said that this is what we want to do. We want it in June, we want it in September. We're doing one with CNN, we're doing one with ABC. This is Donald Trump trying to take back the narrative, not look like he's the person that's just like being pulled along by first Joe Biden and now Vice President Kamala Harris. You know, what I'm hearing from people at ABC is they are moving forward as if there's a debate. They are doing their prep. They are getting their questions together. They are thinking about September 10th.
Even if only Vice President Harris shows up.
Then now it's a town hall.
Then it's a town hall.
Now it's a town hall with just Vice President Kamala Harris. And so if the Trump campaign wants to cede, 90 minutes to his opponent, then that's likely to happen. I will say, the Harris campaign, the folks behind the scenes have said, we want to do ABC and we'll talk about anything else after that. But we're talking about the ABC debate. That's what we've been prepping for. That's what the schedule allows for. But all of this could change. I mean, this entire election has just been like thing after thing after thing changing. That can happen some more here. But I will say the idea that Vice President Harris is scared to debate, she's excited to debate. I've talked to the folks around her, both the inner circle and the inner circle and the folks outside of that. Everyone is on the same page about being ready to debate. And, putting a prosecutor.
She's a prosecutor, for heaven's sakes. She's not scared of prosecuting the case.
And I will say she has also been out on the campaign trail doing these mini town hall style events where she will go, she'll sit with someone, she'll be in conversation, and she'll take questions. And so she is primed and ready to kind of have a conversation, answer questions about specific policy issues. Donald Trump, he has been doing these, big box, and I have to use quotes when I say big box because he had his rally at the same place in Atlanta yesterday that Vice President Harris had hers.
Oh, how'd that turn out?
Not well. And Donald Trump himself on the stage says, I'm not happy. Like, there are a lot of stream of consciousness thoughts happening.
He does tell you what he's thinking.
He tells you right what he's thinking. And I think that the format that he has been taking in his engagement on the campaign trail, it has not supported the idea of debating a seasoned debater, if you will, and that's who Vice President Harris is. He is concerned. This is what Donald Trump had to say about the Vice President, about trying to define her.
So we have to work hard to define her. I don't want to even define her. I just want to say who she is. She's a horror show. She'll destroy our country. She doesn't want anybody saying Merry Christmas. Now she's denying it. You have a candidate who is fake, fake, fake. On the other hand, you have a president who will fight, fight, fight for America. Fight, fight, fight.
He's just repeating what the consultants told him. That was an internal campaign conversation, the senior advisor conversation that was had with them. Sir, we have to define her. You have to stay on message. I've been there delivering the message. Not to Donald Trump, honey. He's undisciplined and, frankly, a bad candidate.
They just don't know. They don't know how to run against Vice President Kamala Harris. They were ready, prepared, and excited to run against Joe Biden.
Oh, the election was over.
Plan. They thought the election was over. They had everything they needed. President Biden was giving them plenty of evidence every single day to what they were saying, how they were framing him. They are having a hard time, clearly, framing and defining, as he was putting it, Vice President Harris. Last week we talked to, for Playbook, we talked to a bunch of both Republicans kind of in the apparatus, but then folks on the campaign, and they said, we are ready. The first week we were called it off guard, but now we're coming back and we have a whole different idea. We're going to talk about, her as the border czar, which isn't true. We're going to talk about X, Y, and Z. But then what ended up happening is, every turn, now they're back talking about her race, about her gender. It is almost impossible to get him away from that at this point.
So I was just saying to Simone during the little media moves, listening to him, can't we just use his words against him? I don't understand why we don't. So, for example,
I'm looking at the verbatim. I'm like, yeah.
So, for example, let's just take the quote we just heard, and this is any of us, and including Kamala Harris if she wants to go down this road. So we have to work hard to define him. I don't want to even define him. I just want to say who he is. He's a horror show. He'll destroy our country. He doesn't want anybody saying Merry Christmas. Now he's denying it. You have a candidate who is fake, fake, fake. On the other hand, you have a president who will fight, 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 or a vice president who will fight, fight, fight for America. The thing about Donald Trump, and I'm curious how reporters cover this, because to be honest, y'all leave a whole lot of ish on the table.
On the cutting board.
Y'all just leave too much on the table, and you take what this man says as if A, it's meaningful, B, it's important. But for that title, president, former president in front of his name, there's no way this iteration of Donald Trump would be a viable candidate for dog catcher, let alone president. And I just don't understand why we allow so much of what he says to seep into our culture and our politics as normal. That's not a normal quote from a human being running for president who cannot string a competent, coherent sentence together talking about someone else who is his political opponent. And we in the press and the media and others look at this as this sort of dogfight, this who's ahead, who's behind rat race, as opposed to what this actually says about how we have fallen as a country to allow that crap every day on our air. But that's just me. What do I know? I'm just sitting here trying to have some coffee.
Just hanging out. The question of whether or not what this tells us about the country, that's where we come to people like y'all, right? People who have worked in politics before, people who are free to share their opinions. I don't think, reporters, the country is not confused about who Donald Trump is. They weren't confused about who Joe Biden was. That's why people didn't want this race, the race between the two of them. And so what we...
But of the two of them, why did Joe Biden have to go? But anyway.
Well, I understand. Well, because some people push him out, honey, but we've discussed that. I would just say this to Michael's point, though, that I do share your frustration about Donald Trump. Like, he is not a worthy opponent to Vice President Harris, wasn't a worthy opponent, in my opinion, to Donald Trump, yet the polls were close, I continue to say, and they will continue to be close, because there are people in this country that want what Donald Trump is selling.
That's true.
There are folks that are just fine with the incoherent sentences to an extent, but I think playing his sound and us dictating what he just, going back over it is important, because I think sometimes people think we're making it up. that Donald Trump, oh, he didn't say that, but
true.
y'all are being dramatic. He didn't mean it like that. No,
Yeah.
he is saying these
Right.
things, and y'all need to take him and his slurred words for face value, honey.
Take it slurry first thing in the morning.